Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. Glen West, senior writer over at Geaux 24/7, joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Glenn, how we doing?
Doing great, Hunt. How about yourself?
Doing quite well. How was your bye week? Did you get some rest, some relaxation? Didn't have to stay up writing until 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, it was pretty uneventful. I went and played golf last week with my dad, and it was the first time I'd picked up the clubs in a year, and you can imagine that it probably didn't go very well for me.
You
So,
have to get like
still a pretty
extended length
stressful week.
clubs?
What's that?
You have to get like extended length clubs to play?
Oh, it's been a whole ordeal since I was like a senior in high school. I had them extended first, and then a couple of years ago, I splurged and got a custom set of irons, and just haven't been able to use them as much as I would like. But last week was a wake up call that I don't think golf is in my future as a profession if this broadcast journalism thing doesn't work out.
Yeah, let's just stick to this side of things. All right, LSU had an opportunity last week to kind of self-scout and get some work done without a game plan in mind as they entered the bye week. You talked to Brian Kelly a couple of times last week. What did you think was the emphasis over the bye week?
Yeah, I think probably what you've heard him say over the last week or so is that they really want to hone down on these rotations, especially at a number of different key positions like safety. I think that you're going to see these rotations kind of tighten a little bit throughout the entire roster. I think that's going to be extremely important here as they kind of discover what pairings, what groups of players work well with others as they kind of head into the most crucial part of their schedule here. It was just a lot of guys rotating in and out. I think for this moment, for these kinds of games, seeing who they can rely on. And I think that they got a little bit more of a clear answer now going forward of who those players are going to be here going forward. So I think that was a big emphasis. Obviously, trying to get some of the guys that are banged up a little bit healthier and on the right track to be playing in this game on Saturday. So it was a pretty, I think, work week like week for LSU in terms of all that stuff. And now you can really lean in fully into the preparation for Ole Miss.
As far as the safety rotation goes, because I just did a segment on that before we reached out to you, and I don't have any idea what the top two safeties look like. Like I'm not a guy that crunches the film and does the study like T-Bob and Jake do in the morning, but like I know who the options are. I just don't know who's out in front. What do you think that looks like initially in the game on Saturday?
Yeah, I have my suspicions. I think Sage Ryan will be back there. I think Deshaun Spears, the freshman, will be back there, and I think Jordan Gilbert will rotate in a lot as well. I mean, those are kind of the three that I think I've pegged as kind of the top three guys that'll be in the deep part of the field. I think you'll see Major Burns at that star position, potentially a Javian Toviano rotating in with him, and maybe there'll be times when Major's back there as a deep safety, and they'll switch up some looks, and they'll have Toviano at the star and have both of them on the field at the same time. So there's a couple different options I could see them going, but I do kind of like that. Gilbert, Ryan, Spears is my pick for the top three at that deep safety spots.
We know last year was just a disaster defensively against Ole Miss. They just couldn't stop them at any point, and the Rebels went right down the field whenever they wanted to all night in Oxford. Do you have confidence that this is going to look a lot different?
I don't know about a lot different.
Yeah.
I think it needs to look different, but it's going to be a lot of the same players that were on the field last year. I mean, if Zy Alexander's is healthy, he's going to be out there. He was on the field last year. Burns, Ryan, all these guys were on the field last year. Stamps. So I would imagine there's going to be a little bit of a prove it kind of element to this group in the secondary. I think they're going to come out and they're going to be aggressive. What I do think is that LSU is not going to be playing 10 to 15 yards off these receivers like they were last year and just getting blown by every single time. I think they're going to be a little bit more up on them in press man coverage. I think there's going to be opportunities for them to kind of make some plays and get their hands on some balls to get off the field. But I mean, it can't look any worse than it did last year. And if it looks anything like last year, then this is going to be a really, really tough game for LSU to get.
Last year was just
It was just a track meet up and down the field, and it was on both sides. I mean, look,
Yeah.
LSU's offense was extremely efficient and explosive in that game, but Ole Miss was just that much more explosive and efficient, and got the last draw.
I mean, look, LSU ran out of time. They would have scored a touchdown
Yeah,
on that drive if they didn't run out of
yeah.
time. They just ran out of time. I wrote this morning. Jaden Daniels had 519 yards of offense. Both Thomas and Neighbors went over 100 yards, and Logan Diggs went over 100 yards on the ground, and they still lost because they couldn't
The
stop
two
them.
teams combined for over 1,300 yards of offense in that game. It's just crazy to think about those numbers,
It
even in the
was
modern day of college football.
it was terrible on defense. So, how do you think Lane Kiffin chooses to attack here? Does he think they run the ball a significant amount? I know we don't know what Trey Harris's status is on the outside, but what do you think the plan is for Lane Kiffin?
I think they're going to test this secondary. I mean, we just talked about it, but I think that they're going to throw the ball. This is the number 2 passing offense in the country. They have some really explosive weapons, starting with Trey Harris. I know that they haven't come out and officially released an injury report yet. I'd love to see kind of what they have as Harris's status going into that game on Saturday. I would be pretty shocked if he doesn't play, but I guess that would also mean that he's pretty banged up. So I do think that they're going to be aggressive at attacking these corners and these safeties and seeing if they can have some success there. But I really do think that this game is going to come down to the trenches for me. It's going to come down to how well LSU's offensive line can protect and Garrett Nussmeier with that front seven on offense, and on defense, it's going to be, can this front seven for LSU get any kind of pressure on Jaxson Dart and make this thing a little bit uncomfortable for him? Because I do think that if there has been a takeaway from my first 5 weeks, it's been that this defensive line has made some real strides this year. I think that they're getting a lot more pressure in the backfield. They've been able to get some blitzes on these quarterbacks, and a mobile guy like Jaxson Dart who can create and who's so good at kind of creating stuff mid play. It's going to be really important that they bring him to the ground and get them behind the chains and off the field on third down.
Ole Miss went deep into the piggy bank for this defense. They spent a lot of money in NIL and in the transfer portal for this defense. Do you think that LSU can go to work on these guys and keep up with Jaxson Dart in this Ole Miss offense?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the biggest thing here is going to be LSU's ability to get the ball out quick. I mean, that's been something that they've done really, really well these first 5 or 6 weeks with Nussmeier behind center. They get the ball out to these wide receivers on screens, on short yardage routes. He does a great job of getting Mason Taylor involved and just spreading the ball around. I think that's going to have to be a huge component in this game because I do think that look, whether it's Ivy or Nolan or Princely or Pegues, whoever it is in that front seven, Perkins. I mean, they just have a really endless wealth of pass rush talent and guys who can kind of can kind of ruin your day if you're an offense. And so this is going to be extremely important for LSU's offensive line to keep Nussmeier upright. I'm not expecting a huge game from the rushing perspective. I mean, the stats are what they are. I think Ole Miss right now is number 2 in the country in terms of rush defense. They average a little under 70 yards per game to opposing offenses in the run game. LSU can try to establish the run all they can, but I do think at the end of the day, what this is going to come down to is Nussmeier being able to get the ball out quick to his playmakers and allowing those guys to make some plays down the field to keep LSU ahead of the chains and kind of drive sustaining to keep Ole Miss's offense off the field.
I think this is just rooted in my expectation for LSU football over the last 25 years that they're in the discussion more often than they're not, and certainly in a 12-team playoff, I would like to think that LSU should have a reasonable chance to make that playoff every single year that it's in a 12-team deal. So I find myself at times talking about playoff situations here or there. Next week, I won't have to ask that question because if they beat Ole Miss, you're in the mix and you're a reasonable playoff. You're a team that's in the conversation. If they get dusted by Ole Miss, well, you can turn out the lights. That's 2 losses, and you're not going to go run the table after that start. So, is it reasonable for me to talk about the playoffs right now? Is that just a misguided thought process?
Look, I mean, every team in the SEC's destiny is still in front of them. I mean, we've seen this the first several weeks of the amount of upsets, the amount of parity that's in this conference. The teams that are at the top right now, they still, whether they have one loss, they have no losses, they still kind of control their own destiny here, and LSU's firmly in that mix. teams that are in that top 6, 7 of the SEC right now, that are all pushing for a couple of those playoff spots. And so I don't think it's wrong to be talking playoffs at this point. I think to your point, if LSU goes out there and lays an egg and gets blown out by 20, 30 points, and I think you can probably shut the lights out on that conversation. But I also think that if they go out there and they show that they can contend with a team like this that is considered to be by many, I think, one of the better ones in the SEC this year, and will be contending at the top of the conference, then I think you can keep those conversations open. So I think that there's double-edged sword to that, kind of question, but I do think that LSU still has everything out in front of them. They have all of their goals out in front of them, and until they don't, I don't see why you can't keep talking about playoff expectations for this team.
They're going to win on Saturday?
I think they do. I've been kind of going back and forth on this. I think kind of going into this thing, I thought if LSU could split Ole Miss and Alabama at home, I'd really like their chances. I honestly like the Alabama matchup a little bit more for LSU as we kind of look at this start to the season. But I also think that there's going to be something here to the fact that LSU's coming off a bye week. They have had a little bit of rest, and that Ole Miss is on six straight games here in 6 weeks. And I think LSU will have an opportunity here with the fans humming, with the atmosphere being as electric as it is. If they can get off to a hot start, and I know that's a big if considering this team right now and kind of the trends of what this season has been so far. But if they can kind of hold their own in the first 2 or 3 quarters and make this a fourth quarter ball game, I do have trust that Nussmeier and this offense can make a few plays in the fourth quarter and help win them this game. So I do think I like LSU in this game, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it goes the other way either.
Is senior writer Go 24/7 for all your team coverage, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, all of which are kind of in the news now because baseball starting up fall practice this week. Certainly football in full swing and basketball right around the corner. You can find all of it at Go 24/7 as well as recruiting. He's our guy, Glen West. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, Hunt. Appreciate it.
You bet. It's just I just feel like as someone who's following LSU and covering LSU, like my baseline is when baseball season starts, like I'm going to talk about hosting a regional. I'm going to talk about hosting a super. I'm going to talk about going to the College World Series. Like that's just where our conversation is going to originate with baseball season. With football, like you show me a 12-team playoff, I'm going to discuss LSU's possibilities of getting in that until they're just not going to make it. It's the same reason why I don't start our basketball conversations on the men's side with the Final Four. Like I start it with the bubble, basically, because I think that that's kind of your baseline until it's not. And right now, I don't feel stupid talking about LSU potentially being a playoff team this year. I'm concerned that things didn't go great in Columbia, South Carolina, or Las Vegas, or against Nichols. That's certainly concerning. And you still got road games at Arkansas and A&M, and you've got to play Bama and Ole Miss, and Oklahoma's coming to town, and now Vanderbilt looks a little plucky, and so nothing. I realize that there are a lot of roadblocks in the way, and there's a real chance that LSU doesn't make the playoff, but I don't feel dumb talking about the playoff. I might next week if LSU gives up 56 to Ole Miss on Saturday. But until that happens, we'll just keep it right here between the buoys and say, hey, they could be a playoff team if they go out there and win this game on Saturday. We'll see. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.